The massive crystal chamber stretched out like a frozen ocean, its walls catching and bending the harsh purple light that bathed everything in an alien glow. This was the heart of galactic power, where the most dangerous creatures in known space made decisions that affected billions of lives. Today, something had rattled them, enough to call an emergency meeting for the first time in over 1,000 years. Captain Thorgrim shifted his massive bulk in the specially designed chair, his thick hide scraping against the metal. Standing nearly 9 feet tall, with arms like tree trunks, he commanded respect from the deadliest pack hunters in 3 star systems. His people, the Vorthok, had earned their place through centuries of brutal conquest, wiping out entire civilizations, with coordinated attacks that left no survivors. Yet today, his 6 yellow eyes betrayed something his enemies had never seen before: uncertainty. To his left sat a creature that seemed to bend light around itself. Grimjo was a Night Stalker, one of the few beings capable of moving between dimensions at will. His kind hunted alone, appearing from nowhere to claim their prey before vanishing back into the void. They were living nightmares that entire species told stories about to frighten their children. Grimjo had personally eliminated the leadership of 12 different worlds. Each kill performed with surgical precision that left investigators baffled for decades. On Thorgrim's right, Queen Razorclaw clicked her razor-sharp mandibles in a rhythm that sent shivers through the other council members. Her insectoid form stretched over 10 feet in length, covered in chitinous armor that had deflected plasma bolts and molecular disruptors without leaving so much as a scratch. Her species consumed everything in their path, turning thriving ecosystems into barren wastelands before moving on to the next world. She had personally overseen the consumption of 7 inhabited planets. These 3 represented the apex of galactic evolution, creatures so perfectly adapted for killing that they had climbed to the top of their respective food chains and kept climbing until they ruled the stars themselves. Nothing in the known universe could challenge their dominance. Nothing had ever made them question their place in the cosmic order, until now. A small crystal device sat on the obsidian table before them, no larger than a human thumb. Inside that crystal lay recordings from a routine first contact mission to a small blue planet on the outer rim of an unremarkable spiral galaxy. The planet's inhabitants called themselves humans, and initial reports had classified them as another species of intelligent prey animals, tool users who had developed technology but lacked the predatory instincts necessary for true galactic dominance. The reports had been wrong, terrifyingly wrong. Thorgrim's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. "Play it again." His words carried the authority of someone who had never needed to repeat an order twice across the galaxy. That voice had been the last sound countless victims heard before the end. The hologram shimmered to life above the crystal, displaying a simple diplomatic meeting room with bland walls and standard furniture. Nothing threatening about it, nothing to suggest what was coming. An advanced scout from the Galactic Survey Corps sat across from a human female, dressed in what their databases identified as formal diplomatic attire. She appeared small and fragile by galactic standards, perhaps 5.5 feet tall, with the kind of build that suggested a species evolved for endurance rather than combat. The conversation had proceeded normally for the first several minutes. Standard diplomatic protocols, exchange of basic information, preliminary discussions about trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. The kind of boring administrative work that preceded the integration of another minor species into the galactic community. Then the human woman had looked directly into the recording device. The effect on the assembled predators was immediate and visceral. Thorgrim's massive frame tensed, as if preparing for combat. Grimjaw's shadowy form seemed to solidify, his natural camouflage faltering as ancient instincts overrode conscious control. Queen Razorclaw's clicking stopped entirely, her compound eyes focusing with laser intensity on the projection. "There," Queen Razorclaw hissed, her voice like grinding metal. "Do you see it?" They all saw it. Ambassador Diana Thompson looked into the camera with eyes that held something no prey species should possess. It wasn't the wide-eyed wonder they expected from a species encountering galactic civilization for the first time. It wasn't fear or submission or even the calculating curiosity of an intelligent species trying to determine where they fit in the cosmic hierarchy. It was recognition. Cold, patient recognition from something that understood exactly what it was looking at and wasn't impressed. Those eyes measured and evaluated with the kind of precision that came from millions of years of evolutionary refinement. They noted weak points and potential threats with the unconscious efficiency of a creature born to hunt. Most disturbing of all, they showed no trace of the instinctive deference that every other species displayed when confronted with true apex predators. "Impossible," Grimjaw growled from the shadows, his voice like wind through a graveyard. The preliminary reports classified them as prey animals who developed intelligence through social cooperation. They should be showing submission behaviors. Thorgrim's claws extended without conscious thought, scraping against the crystal table and leaving deep grooves in the nearly indestructible material. In 3,000 years of conquest, spanning hundreds of worlds and dozens of species, he had never encountered that particular expression directed at his kind. It was the look one apex predator gave another when silently measuring threat levels and calculating odds of survival. The implications were staggering. If humans were actually apex predators themselves, it would mean the galaxy contained a species of cooperative hunters that had achieved technological advancement without anyone noticing their true nature. It would mean that somewhere out in the cosmic dark, an entire civilization of predators had been quietly developing the tools and knowledge necessary to challenge the established order. Even worse, it might mean that humanity represented something the galactic community had never encountered before, apex predators who had learned to work together instead of competing for individual dominance. The very concept violated everything the council members understood about the nature of predation and survival. The crystal chamber fell silent, except for the subtle hum of artificial gravity generators and life support systems. Each council member processed the implications in their own way, drawing on millions of years of predatory instincts that had never failed them before. Those same instincts were now screaming warnings they had never felt. Thorgrim's decision came with the brutal certainty that had made him the most feared pack leader in Vorthok history. "We investigate personally," he declared, his voice carrying the finality of a death sentence. "Something about these humans requires closer examination." The alien warships emerged from the twisted fabric of hyperspace like predators stepping out of tall grass. Their hulls gleamed with the dark beauty of weapons designed by species that had never known defeat. Each vessel stretched over a mile in length, bristling with energy cannons capable of cracking planets and shields that could deflect the fury of dying stars. They moved through space with the confident grace of apex predators entering new territory, expecting nothing more than another routine encounter with primitive prey animals. General Robert Morrison stood perfectly still on the observation deck of Earth's primary orbital station, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the alien fleet approach. Around him, his senior staff maintained their positions with the kind of disciplined calm that came from years of facing impossible odds and finding ways to win anyway. The humans showed no signs of the panic or awe that usually greeted the arrival of galactic apex predators. Colonel Helen Carter broke the silence first, her voice carrying the dry humor that had kept her sane through 3 separate alien contact scenarios. "Beautiful ships," she observed, though her right hand never strayed far from the plasma pistol at her hip. "Built for killing, not exploring. These aren't diplomats coming to shake hands and exchange gifts." Morrison nodded slowly, his gray eyes never leaving the approaching vessels. He had spent the last 2 weeks studying every available file on these species, learning their hunting patterns, their weaknesses, their preferred methods of establishing dominance over new territories. The Vorthok were pack hunters who overwhelmed their prey through coordinated attacks involving thousands of individual warriors. The Night Stalkers hunted alone, using their ability to phase between dimensions to appear anywhere without warning. Queen Razorclaw's species consumed everything in their path, turning thriving worlds into empty husks before moving on to their next meal. Each species had earned their place at the top of the galactic food chain through pure, brutal efficiency. They were living proof that intelligence meant nothing without the killer instinct to back it up. At least, that's what they believed. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel," reported Lieutenant David Park from his position at the communications console. His fingers moved across the holographic interface with practiced ease, routing the alien signal through the station's translation matrix. "They're requesting permission to observe our military training exercises." The request sent a ripple of tension through the human staff. Military exercises meant revealing tactics, capabilities, and strategic thinking to potential enemies. Standard protocol would be to politely decline and offer cultural exchanges instead. But Morrison had anticipated this moment from the instant the alien fleet entered the solar system. "Grant their request," he said quietly. "Full access. Let them see exactly what they're dealing with." 6 hours later, the alien delegation stood on a carefully chosen hillside overlooking Training Ground 7, one of Earth's most advanced military simulation facilities. The landscape below them stretched for miles, a carefully designed environment that could replicate any terrain found on habitable worlds throughout the galaxy. Today, it resembled the broken urban landscape of a city under siege, complete with collapsed buildings, debris-filled streets, and hidden sniper positions. Captain Thorgrim adjusted his enhanced vision systems, his 6 eyes tracking multiple targets simultaneously as 3 companies of human marines moved through the simulated battlefield. His massive frame remained motionless, but internal sensors registered elevated stress hormones that hadn't been present since his first hunt as a juvenile pack member over 2 centuries ago. "Watch their movement patterns," he muttered to Queen Razorclaw, his voice barely audible above the distant sound of simulated gunfire. "They're not advancing randomly. Every step is calculated." The insectoid queen clicked her mandibles in agreement, her compound eyes processing thousands of visual data points per second. "Look at their formation spacing," she responded, her metallic voice carrying undertones of something that might have been respect. "Each soldier knows exactly where every other team member is positioned. They're accounting for overlapping fields of fire, escape routes, and potential ambush positions, all at the same time." What they were witnessing went far beyond standard military tactics. The human soldiers moved through the urban terrain with a fluid precision that spoke of instincts refined over millions of years. When they encountered enemy positions, there was no wasted motion, no unnecessary risks taken. Each Marine functioned as part of a larger, predatory organism. Their individual actions coordinated through subtle signals and shared understanding that required no verbal communication. A squad of 12 Marines approached a fortified position from 3 different angles, their movements synchronized with mechanical precision. The lead group provided suppressing fire while flanking elements maneuvered into position, and within seconds the enemy strongpoint was neutralized with minimal ammunition expenditure and 0 casualties. The entire engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. "Impossible," Queen Razorclaw whispered, her voice carrying the kind of awe reserved for witnessing something that challenged fundamental laws of nature. "Prey animals don't hunt like that. They can't coordinate at that level without losing individual initiative." Grimjaw materialized beside them without warning, his shadowy form solidifying just enough to be visible. Even his dimensional shifting abilities perfected through millions of years of evolution couldn't completely mask the unease radiating from his alien consciousness. "I've been observing their population centers," he reported, his voice like wind through empty spaces. "They're Entire civilization is structured as a hunting ground, but not in the way we understand it. The Night Stalker paused, struggling to find words for concepts that had no equivalent in his species' experience. They don't hunt other species for territory or resources. They hunt each other, their economic systems, their recreational activities, their entertainment media, their educational institutions. Everything is based on competition between individuals who possess apex predator instincts. The implications were staggering. Every major galactic civilization had been built by a single dominant predator species that had eliminated or subjugated all potential competitors on their homeworld. The idea of an entire planet filled with cooperative apex predators was like discovering a world where gravity flowed upward or where stars burned cold. Thorgrim's claws extended involuntarily, scraping against the observation equipment as his nervous system processed threat assessments that contradicted everything his species had learned about survival and dominance. They compete with each other while maintaining pack cohesion against external threats. He said slowly, each word carrying the weight of a paradigm shift that would reshape galactic politics. That shouldn't be possible. On the training ground, below, the human Marines had successfully completed their exercise and were beginning the process of equipment maintenance and tactical review. Even in this routine activity, their movements displayed the unconscious efficiency of creatures born to hunt. They cleaned weapons with reverent care, discussed engagement strategies with analytical precision, and maintained situational awareness even while relaxing. The three alien observers exchanged glances that conveyed volumes of unspoken communication. They had arrived, expecting to evaluate another species of intelligent prey animals seeking membership in galactic civilization. Instead, they were witnessing something that challenged every assumption about the nature of predation, cooperation, and evolutionary success. Humanity wasn't seeking to join the galactic community as junior partners or protected clients. They were announcing themselves as competitors for apex predator status, and they brought capabilities that no existing species could match. The main conference hall of the orbital station had been transformed for the evening's diplomatic gathering. Soft lighting cast warm shadows across polished metal surfaces, while the vast observation windows provided a stunning backdrop of Earth rotating slowly below. The table itself was a masterpiece of diplomatic engineering, designed to accommodate the vastly different physiologies of multiple species while maintaining an atmosphere of equality and respect. Admiral Robert Hayes sat at the head of the human delegation, his dress uniform bearing the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades making life-and-death decisions in the depths of space. Around him, carefully selected representatives of humanity's finest minds had arranged themselves according to protocols developed through years of interspecies contact. Scientists, military officers, diplomats, and cultural experts all shared the same calm demeanor that had become humanity's signature in galactic affairs. The alien delegation had positioned themselves according to their own ancient traditions. Captain Thorgrim occupied the center position among the Vorthok representatives, his massive frame requiring a specially reinforced chair that groaned under his weight. To his left, the shifting shadow that was Grimjaw seemed to bend light around himself, creating a zone of unnatural darkness that made nearby humans unconsciously avoid looking directly at him. Queen Razorclaw had claimed the far end of the table, her insectoid form requiring nearly 10 feet of clearance for her razor-sharp appendages. The meal had proceeded smoothly for the first hour. Cultural exchanges, discussions of trade possibilities, and careful explorations of mutual interests filled the conversation with the kind of diplomatic small talk that had greased the wheels of interstellar relations for centuries. The humans demonstrated their usual adaptability, sampling alien delicacies without complaint and engaging in complex discussions about art, philosophy, and science with the easy confidence of a species comfortable with learning from others. But beneath the polite surface, Tensions simmered like magma beneath a thin crust. The alien representatives had come expecting to encounter another species of clever prey animals seeking protection and guidance from their galactic superiors. Instead, they found themselves facing beings who showed no deference, no instinctive submission to their obvious predatory superiority. The humans treated them as equals, which was itself a form of challenge that none of the aliens quite knew how to process. General Kevin Morrison sat 3 seats down from Admiral Hayes, methodically working his way through a plate of synthesized protein that bore only passing resemblance to actual food. His weathered face showed the kind of patience that came from years of waiting for the right moment to strike. Unlike many of his colleagues, Morrison had grown up in the outer colonies, where survival often depended on reading the intentions of others before they made their move. Tonight, every instinct he possessed was screaming warnings about the massive alien sitting across from him. Captain Thorgrim had been watching the humans throughout the meal, his 6 yellow eyes tracking subtle movements and behavioral patterns, with the focused intensity of a predator evaluating potential prey. What he observed disturbed him in ways he couldn't quite articulate. These creatures moved wrong for prey animals. They sat too straight, watched too carefully, and showed none of the nervous energy that characterized species accustomed to being hunted. The breaking point came during a discussion about territorial boundaries in contested star systems. Admiral Hayes was explaining humanity's position on expansion protocols. When Thorgrim decided he had endured enough uncertainty, rising slowly to his full 8-foot height, the Vorthok pack leader deliberately fixed all 6 of his predatory eyes on General Morrison. The message was unmistakable. In every culture throughout the galaxy, direct eye contact between apex predators was a formal challenge that could only be resolved through submission or combat. It was the most basic form of dominance display, refined through millions of years of evolution into an instinctive communication that transcended species boundaries. Prey animals always looked away, always. It was written into their genetic code as surely as the need to breathe. Morrison looked up from his meal, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. For a heartbeat, the entire conference hall balanced on the edge of an abyss that could plunge 3 civilizations into war. Then Morrison set down his utensil, leaned back in his chair, and met Thorgrim's gaze with the steady calm of someone who had stared down death more times than he could count. The silence that followed was pregnant with possibilities. Around the table, conversations died as both human and alien representatives sensed the fundamental shift in the evening's dynamics. Seconds stretched into an eternity as 2 apex predators from different worlds evaluated each other across the vast gulf of evolutionary development. Morrison's expression never wavered. His gray eyes held the cold calculation of something that understood exactly what was being asked of it and refused to be intimidated. There was no fear there, no submission, no acknowledgement of superiority. Instead, Thorgrim found himself staring into the gaze of another apex predator who was measuring angles, calculating distances, and evaluating threat levels with the unconscious precision of something born to hunt. Dr. Patricia Warren, the expedition's chief xenobiologist, slowly set down her fork with movements so deliberate they seemed choreographed. Her action triggered a chain reaction around the table as other humans began to shift in their seats, their bodies moving with the fluid purpose of pack hunters responding to a challenge against one of their own. None of it appeared threatening on the surface. No weapons were drawn, no aggressive postures adopted, no overt displays of hostility demonstrated, but Queen Razorclaw's compound eyes registered what was happening with the clarity of a creature that had spent centuries analyzing the movement, patterns of potential threats. "They're surrounding us," she whispered to Grimjo, her metallic voice barely audible above the subtle sounds of humans repositioning themselves around the conference table. It wasn't intentional in the conscious sense. The humans weren't following some predetermined battle plan or responding to secret signals from their military leadership. What Queen Razorclaw was observing was pure instinct, the kind of coordinated movement that emerged when pack predators detected a potential threat to their group's hierarchy. Within 30 seconds, every human in the conference hall had unconsciously adopted positions that created overlapping fields of observation and potential response vectors. Scientists and diplomats moved with the same predatory awareness as decorated military officers, their civilized facades falling away, to reveal something far more ancient and dangerous underneath. Even more disturbing was the fact that none of them looked away from the alien delegation. In any normal diplomatic situation, support staff and secondary personnel would avert their eyes during a dominance display between primary representatives. It was basic survival instinct, the kind of behavior that kept non-combatants alive when apex predators established territorial boundaries. These humans kept watching, all of them. Their eyes tracked every movement, every subtle shift in posture, every potential threat, with the collective awareness of a hunting pack that had identified dangerous prey. Thorgrim felt something he hadn't experienced since his first hunt as a juvenile pack member over 2 centuries ago. Fear, not the simple concern for physical safety that came with facing armed opponents, but the deep, primal terror of recognizing that he might have made a catastrophic error in judgment. These weren't prey animals playing at civilization. These were apex predators who had learned to coordinate their hunting instincts with a precision that no solitary predator species could match. They had turned cooperation itself into a weapon, transforming the very traits that other species saw as weakness into their greatest source of strength. The Vorthok captain's hunting instincts, refined through millions of years of evolution and honed by centuries of personal experience, were screaming warnings he had never felt before. Every fiber of his being was telling him to disengage, to retreat, to find safer territory where the rules of predation still made sense. After what felt like hours but had probably been less than a minute, Thorgrim slowly lowered his gaze and settled back into his chair. The admission of uncertainty felt like swallowing broken glass, but survival instincts trumped pride when dealing with unknown predators. Admiral Hayes waited until the tension began to drain from the room before speaking again. His voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had just witnessed a fundamental shift in galactic politics and understood all the implications. Perhaps, he said with careful diplomacy, we should discuss the terms of mutual cooperation between equals. Dr. Catherine Foster stood in the center of the research facility's main laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays that painted the walls with images of humanity's long journey from the African savanna to the stars. The alien expedition had requested this briefing after 3 days of increasingly disturbing observations about human behavior, and she could see the tension radiating from their massive forms as they arranged themselves around the circular chamber. The laboratory itself was a testament to human ingenuity, its clean lines and efficient design speaking to a species that had learned to make the most of limited resources. Quantum processors hummed quietly in the walls, processing terabytes of genetic data and evolutionary models with the kind of computational power that had once existed only in dreams. Yet, for all its technological sophistication, the room felt oddly primitive, as if the sterile environment couldn't quite mask the predatory heritage of its creators. Captain Thorgrim occupied the largest chair, his 8-foot frame requiring custom accommodations that the humans had provided without comment or complaint. His 6 eyes tracked every movement in the room with the hypervigilant awareness of something that had never learned to truly relax. Beside him, Queen Razorclaw's compound eyes processed thousands of visual data points per second, her mandibles clicking in the rapid patterns that indicated extreme stress among her species. Grimjoe had chosen to remain partially phased, his shadowy form flickering between dimensions, as if his very presence in normal space required conscious effort. The Night Stalker's unease was palpable. radiating from him in waves that made nearby monitoring equipment register false readings. These were beings who had conquered star systems through pure predatory excellence, yet something about this simple, scientific briefing had them on edge. Dr. Foster activated the first holographic display with a gesture, and suddenly the air above them filled with the rolling grasslands of prehistoric Africa. The image was so realistic that several alien observers instinctively checked for escape routes, their predator instincts responding to an environment that looked like perfect hunting territory. "Your initial assessment was fundamentally flawed," she began, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had spent decades studying the darkest chapters of human evolution. "The preliminary reports classified us as prey animals who developed intelligence through social cooperation. That conclusion was wrong in every possible way." The display shifted, showing a group of early humans moving across the savannah with purposeful determination. Unlike the panicked flight patterns typical of prey species, these figures moved with the patient confidence of creatures that had never doubted their place at the top of the food chain. Humans didn't evolve as prey animals who got lucky with brain development. Dr. Foster continued, watching as the alien observers leaned forward despite themselves. "We evolved as persistence hunters, apex predators, who refined our killing techniques. Over 4 million years of continuous evolution." The hologram zoomed in on a hunting party, tracking a massive buffalo across miles of open terrain. The humans didn't rush or panic when their prey initially escaped. Instead, they maintained a steady pace that seemed almost leisurely, following footprints and blood trails with the methodical precision of creatures that understood exactly how this hunt would end. Captain Thorgrim's claws extended, involuntarily, as he watched the ancient humans run down their prey through sheer endurance. "That's impossible," he rumbled, his voice carrying undertones of something that might have been fear. "Persistence hunting requires cooperation between multiple individuals. Apex predators are solitary by definition." Dr. Foster smiled, and for the first time the expression looked genuinely predatory to the assembled aliens. "That's where your understanding breaks down," she replied. "Every species in the galactic community achieved apex status through individual excellence. You assumed that was the only path to predatory dominance because it was the only path you had ever seen." Dr. Richard Mitchell stepped forward from his position at the analysis station, his movements carrying the fluid grace that the aliens were beginning to recognize as distinctly human. "We represent something your species thought was evolutionarily impossible," he explained, calling up additional displays that showed human brain development over millions of years. "We're apex predators who achieved dominance through cooperation rather than competition." The implications were staggering. Every major civilization in the galaxy had been built by species that had eliminated all potential rivals on their homeworlds before reaching the stars. The Vorthok had exterminated dozens of competing predator species during their rise to dominance. Queen Razorclaw's ancestors had consumed entire ecosystems, leaving nothing alive that could challenge their supremacy. Grimjaw's people had systematically eliminated every other intelligent species on their planet through targeted assassination campaigns. The idea that apex predators could coexist and cooperate challenged fundamental assumptions about evolution, survival, and the nature of intelligence itself. It suggested that humanity had found a completely different solution to the problem of apex predation, one that involved turning cooperation itself into a weapon. Queen Razorclaw's mandibles clicked with increasing rapidity, the metallic sound filling the laboratory like machine gun fire. "You're claiming that an entire planet of apex predators learned to work together instead of killing each other," she said, her compound eyes fixed on the genetic data flowing across the displays. "That violates every principle of evolutionary biology." "More than that," Dr. Foster replied, calling up new images that showed modern human cities, sports competitions, and business districts. We learned to compete with each other while maintaining pack cohesion against external threats. Every human you've met is simultaneously prey and predator to every other human. Yet we coordinate against outside dangers with perfect efficiency. The displays showed humans engaging in activities that looked like ritualized combat. Football games where armored warriors crashed into each other with bone-jarring force. Boxing matches where fighters attempted to render each other unconscious. Business negotiations where fortunes were won and lost through verbal warfare. Yet, when external threats appeared, these same competitive humans would instantly transform into coordinated hunting packs with shared objectives. Dr. Mitchell highlighted specific genetic markers that tracked the development of human cooperation instincts. Alongside predatory abilities, we're the only known species that developed apex predator capabilities while maintaining strong social bonds, he explained. Most predators sacrifice cooperation for individual excellence. We found a way to enhance both. Grimjoe materialized more fully, his shadowy form solidifying as the implications of what he was hearing penetrated his consciousness. That makes you potentially more dangerous than any solitary hunter in the galaxy, he said, his voice like wind through empty spaces. A species of coordinated apex predators with advanced technology and 4 million years of refined hunting instincts. Dr. Foster's smile widened, and every alien in the room suddenly understood that they were looking at something far more dangerous than they had initially realized. We're not potentially more dangerous, she corrected gently. We are more dangerous. We're just civilized enough to prefer cooperation over conquest. The laboratory fell silent, except for the quiet hum of processing equipment and life support systems. The alien observers sat motionless, their predatory minds working through scenarios and threat assessments that challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic hierarchy. Captain Thorgrim was the first to speak, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had just realized that his species' 3,000-year dominance might be coming to an end. "What do you want from us?" he asked, the question emerging as part challenge, part plea. Dr. Foster gestured to the displays, showing human cities, space stations, and exploration vessels spreading across the solar system. "The same thing any apex predator wants," she replied. "Recognition, respect, and territory sufficient to support our population's growth. The only difference is that we're willing to share the hunting grounds." The silence that followed was filled with the sound of paradigms shifting and assumptions crumbling. Humanity wasn't seeking membership in galactic civilization as junior partners or protected clients. They were announcing themselves as competitors for apex predator status, and they brought capabilities that no existing species had ever imagined possible. The age of solitary hunters, ruling the galaxy through individual excellence, was ending. The age of cooperative apex predators had begun. The crystalline chamber stretched upward like a frozen cathedral, its translucent walls refracting the harsh light of distant stars into patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. This was the heart of galactic power, where decisions were made that affected the fate of billions across hundreds of worlds. The Apex Council had convened an emergency session only 17 times in the last 3,000 years, and never before had the outcome carried such profound implications for the future of civilization itself. 12 species were represented in the massive hall, each one a testament to the brutal efficiency of evolutionary selection. The Vorthok occupied the largest section, their pack-hunting heritage evident in the way they arranged themselves in precise formation around Captain Thorgrim's central position. The insectoid representatives of Queen Razorclaw's hive clustered together with mechanical precision, their compound eyes tracking every movement with predatory awareness. Grimjaw's people existed as shifting shadows along the walls, their dimensional phasing abilities making them appear more like living darkness than physical beings. Each species present had earned their place through conquest, domination, and the complete elimination of all rivals on their respective homeworlds. They were the apex predators of their ecosystems, the final evolutionary products of millions of years of refinement toward perfect killing efficiency. Their combined fleets could reduce entire star systems to cosmic dust. Their hunting grounds encompassed thousands of inhabited worlds, and their mere presence in a sector was enough to make lesser species flee in terror. Today, they faced something that challenged every assumption they held about the nature of predation and survival. Ambassador Jennifer Thompson stood at the center of the crystalline hall, her human frame appearing almost comically small compared to the massive alien forms surrounding her. She wore simple diplomatic attire, no weapons were visible, and she carried herself with the kind of calm confidence that lesser species mistook for naivety. The assembled predators now knew better. Behind her, holographic displays showed Earth, in all its blue-green glory, a world teeming with life that humanity had somehow managed to dominate without destroying. The images rotated slowly, revealing cities that sprawled across continents, yet left room for forests, oceans that supported both human industry and thriving ecosystems, and skies filled with both natural birds and human aircraft sharing the same airspace. Honored council members, Ambassador Thompson began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, despite its modest volume. Humanity comes before you today, not as supplicants, seeking protection or guidance, but as equals requesting recognition of what we have always been. Captain Thorgrim shifted in his massive chair, the reinforced crystal groaning under his weight. His 6 eyes remained fixed on the human ambassador, with the kind of focused attention he usually reserved for prey that had proven more dangerous than initially anticipated. You claim equality with species that have conquered entire star systems through pure hunting excellence, he rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. What gives a species from a single world the right to sit among apex predators who have proven themselves through millennia of dominance? Thompson's response came without hesitation, her gray eyes meeting the alien captain's gaze with steady confidence. We claim equality with species that needed to conquer star systems to prove their predatory nature, she replied. Humanity achieved apex predator status on our homeworld 4 million years ago, and we did it without driving a single major species to extinction. We learned something that apparently escaped the rest of the galaxy: sustainable hunting practices. The chamber erupted in a buzz of alien communication as the implications of her words sank in. Queen Razorclaw's mandibles clicked rapidly, while her compound eyes processed the data streaming across the holographic displays. The concept Thompson was describing violated fundamental principles of predatory behavior that had governed galactic civilization since its inception. Impossible, Queen Razorclaw's metallic voice cut through the noise. Apex predators consume until resources are exhausted, then move to new hunting grounds. It's the natural order. How can you claim dominance while allowing prey species to survive? Thompson gestured to the rotating image of Earth, calling up detailed ecological surveys that showed the complex web of relationships between humans and other terrestrial life forms. Because we understood that destroying our prey base would ultimately destroy us, she explained. True, apex predators don't eliminate their food sources, they manage them. We learned to hunt sustainably because we recognized that our homeworld was also our permanent territory. The silence that followed was profound. Every species in the galactic community had followed the same evolutionary path: consume everything available, eliminate all competition, then expand to new territories when resources became scarce. The idea that apex predators could deliberately limit their own hunting to ensure long-term survival challenged the very foundations of their understanding about intelligence and evolution. Grimjaw materialized more fully near the center of the chamber, his shadowy form solidifying as he processed what he was hearing. What do humans offer the galactic community? He asked, his voice like wind through empty spaces. If you're truly apex predators, Why should existing predator species accept your presence, instead of eliminating the competition? Thompson's eyes swept across the assembled aliens, and each one felt that familiar shock of recognition that had first alerted them to humanity's true nature. She looked at them not with fear or deference, but with the calculating gaze of something that understood exactly what they were, and remained completely unintimidated by their predatory heritage. "We offer partnership between equals," she said, her voice carrying new undertones of authority that made several aliens unconsciously check their escape routes. "Humanity brings something unique to the galaxy, the proven ability to coordinate multiple apex predator species toward common objectives. We've spent 4 million years learning to balance individual competition with collective cooperation. We can teach others to do the same." The chamber erupted into chaos as the full implications became clear. These humans weren't just announcing themselves as another predator species seeking territory. They were proposing to become mediators between species that had never been able to work together due to their inherently solitary predatory nature. For 3 hours, debates raged across the crystalline hall as representatives argued, threatened, and calculated the potential benefits and risks of accepting humanity as equals. Some voices called for immediate military action to eliminate this potential threat before it could grow stronger. Others recognized the strategic advantages of having coordinators who could facilitate cooperation between traditionally incompatible predator species. Captain Thorgrim finally called for order, his massive voice cutting through the arguing like a blade. "Enough," he commanded. "We vote now. The question before us is simple. Do we recognize humanity as fellow apex predators deserving of equal status in the galactic community?" One by one, the galaxy's most dangerous species cast their votes. The Vorthok delegation voted in favor, after recognizing that humanity's pack-hunting heritage made them natural allies. Queen Razorclaw's hive reluctantly agreed after calculating the potential benefits of human coordination abilities. Grimjaw's people voted yes, after realizing that humans might be the key to finally achieving cooperation between solitary predator species. When the final tally was announced, the result was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, a species was being admitted to apex predator status, not through conquest or domination, but through recognition of their unique evolutionary adaptations. "The motion carries," Captain Thorgrim announced, his voice carrying the weight of history. "Humanity is granted not merely membership in the galactic community, but a permanent seat on the Apex Council itself. Welcome, fellow hunters. Ambassador." Thompson smiled one final time as the session concluded, and every predator in the chamber now understood that expression perfectly. It was the satisfied look of a successful hunter who had achieved her objective without needing to reveal her claws. She had stalked them through weeks of carefully orchestrated demonstrations, maneuvered them into position through strategic revelations about human nature, and finally closed the trap through diplomatic skill rather than violence. The galaxy had just gained its most unusual apex predators, and as the crystalline chamber began to empty, each departing species carried the same unsettling realization: they had been outmaneuvered by creatures who hunted with words instead of weapons. Nothing would ever be the same.